itself is a month that we really begin to prepare ourselves for this sacred and beautiful month of Ramadan. At the end of the day, the month of Ramadan is a month of attaining that spirituality, that connection, that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, the book, the Sunnah. All of these things should be goals for all of us. As young kids say, #goals, right? So these are our goals, our spiritual goals of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing the book of Allah, knowing the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, learning how to cry and weep in Quran. That is something that we really have to learn. I know my topic is Zakat. I'm going to come to it. It's very dry. I know you guys are going to get bored so much. So I'm just going to lay a foundation of the importance of Ramadan. Because as human beings, we only dedicate our vision and focus to things that we value. And I want you to understand this. Not just listen to me and leave, but think about it. Your dedication is only to those things that you value. Jazakallah khair, needed that. If you do not value something, you will not be dedicated to it. See in your own life, your dedications are only because of the value of something. How much do I value Ramadan is something that I need to understand. A few weeks ago, I shared a khutbah in one of the masjids locally, and I'm going to share that khutbah with you before I come to Zakat, just so that we built this interest of Ramadan. I told them that I'm going to say a statement that you might think is very offensive and weird. What am I saying? But it's so important. And that is that all of us are waiting for a miracle to come true in our life. What does that mean? All of us are waiting for a miracle to happen in our life. And we're hoping for it to come out. But we're just waiting for it. And the month of Ramadan is to get your miracles come true. And let me explain that to you. What do I mean by miracle? I mean by miracle, something that you desire and hope and wish to achieve in your life, but you think it's impossible. So now it becomes like a miracle for you, right? If it happens, it's a miracle. If I get 1600, that will be a miracle on my SATs. If I get to that college, that will be a miracle for me. If I get to the big four, that will be a miracle for me. Meaning, for all of us, we have different goals that we hope to achieve, but sometimes knowing ourselves, we give up. Right? Do you agree with me? I'm not trying to give a lecture here that you listen to me and get bored, but understand something. All of us have something that we want to achieve in our lives, but we know from our own self and capacities that I can't. And then that wish or hope becomes a miracle for me. Only if there was a miracle, I'll be able to achieve that, right? That becomes. So you know what? Ramadan is a month of getting your miracles come true. And let me share with you 3 quick stories. Forgive me for my stories, Zakat stories, and now these stories. I'm going to share with you 3 quick stories from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, because I see so many youth. 3 quick stories in which you see miracles come true. And they are attached with Ramadan. Number 1, the story of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Quran itself, is one of the biggest historical miracles or mu'jizat that we see on the face of this earth, which changed the life of such individuals that people thought could never change. Men like Hamza, men like Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu majma'een, their hearts became softened because of the kalam of Allah, the book of Allah. And you know what? The book of Allah was revealed in Ramadan. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces to us Ramadan not by fasting, but He introduces to us Ramadan by Quran. So one of the biggest miracles or historical seerah miracles of Islam is Quran in the month of Ramadan. So Quran came as a means of guidance, changed humanity from its roots, and it was such a precious book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people said, if you must have heard this so many times, people said the animals of Makkah can accept Islam, but Umar will not change. What happened? Allah gave him Islam. Not only Islam, he became such a strong Muslim that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ said, لَوْ كَانَ بَعْدَ نَبِيًّا لَكَانَ عُمَرٍ. If there would have been prophecy, and there's no prophecy after Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it would have been you, O Umar ibn al-Khattab. So now things that were considered to be miracles, it will be a miracle if Umar changes. It will be a miracle if Hamza changes. What happened? Quran changed their lives. So things that you deem and think to be impossible are perfectly possible. They are perfectly possible because that's what Quran is. Quran is something that changes, it's miraculous. It will change the lives of so many people. So that's the first historical miracle to take with you. Number two, and I know I'm going to come to Zakat, so just a few minutes. Number two miracle, just to let you know that the value of Ramadan, right? I'm sharing all this to you because I want you to dedicate yourself to Ramadan. You're not going to dedicate yourself to Ramadan because you don't know the value of it. And when we know the value of it, we'll dedicate our time. And the biggest thing I can tell you all and myself is a month of Ramadan is to get your miracles come true. If you have dreams that you want to get them true, that's your month. So how much you're going to dedicate yourself now, right? So let me share with you the second story. And these are all authentic stories from the seerah. Number two story. It is the second year of the Prophet, it is the second year of the migration of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to Medina. For those who have learned a little bit about seerah, you would be able to catch this a little quicker. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ lived for 40 years in Mecca. He received this prophecy. He lived for another 13 years. He's 53 years of age. He's made to leave Mecca. He makes this famous journey known as Hijrah. He leaves towards Medina. It's the second year. About 16 months, 17 months had passed, that it's the month of Ramadan now. The first year that the Muslims moved in Medina, there was no ahkamat of fasting in Ramadan. The Muslims fasted in Medina the second year. So when the second year came and the month of Ramadan came, it was the ayahs of the Quran, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, and the ayah of the fasting came, the ayat of Tahwil al-Qibla, the changing of the Kaaba from Bayt al-Muqaddas toward Baytullah came. So many things were happening to the Muslims, and all of a sudden it is the 17th of Ramadan, and the Muslims are made to leave Medina and go face the army of Quraysh, which are 1,000 strong. The Muslims are 313, and the Quraysh are 1,000 in number. It is the 17th of Ramadan when the two armies meet. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu mentions, I remember the morning of the 17th of Ramadan, which was the day of Jummah in the plains of Badr, the Nabi of Allah ﷺ was fixing the lines, the sufuf of the Muslims. That he had the people with the spears, the swords, the spears and the archers lined up in like that. كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْصُوص. The Quran talks about the story in Surah Al-Anfal. So he was lining up the Sahaba, and all of a sudden the Nabi of Allah ﷺ began to plead and cry to Allah so profusely and began to say, Oh Allah, I have brought these 313 people with me. Oh Allah, if these men are not left behind, meaning if, oh Allah, you do not help us in any way, which is a miraculous way, Ya Allah, there will be no one to say your name on the face of this earth ever again. And he cried so profusely that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu said that he raised his hands. There are 2 or 3 places that you find in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ that he prayed like this. The usual prayer of the Prophet ﷺ as sunnah was like this. He would take his hands, move it from his chest, and he would plead like this. This was the usual dua of the Prophet ﷺ according to sunnah and the books of hadith. There are few times in the entire seerah of the Prophet ﷺ that he made dua like this. These are few times that he made dua like this. So the day of Badr was a time that he made dua like this. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh said when the Prophet of Allah ﷺ raised his hands like this, and of course the day of Arafah when he performed Hajj was also that moment. So when on the day of Badr he raised his hand, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh said, the cloth on the back of the Prophet ﷺ fell to the ground. So, and I saw him crying so profusely that I said, Ya Nabi Allah, enough. Ya Nabi Allah, enough. It's enough. Nusra of Allah, the help of Allah will be coming, Ya Rasulullah. Do not, put yourself in so much difficulty. And I covered the Prophet ﷺ. As soon as I covered him, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh said, he looked at me and he smiled. And the Nabi of Allah ﷺ said, Oh Abu Bakr, I saw Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, along with the angels tied with turbans, came upon camels and stallions of camels, of horses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself revealed the ayah of the Quran, chapter 8, Surah Anfal, verse 48, in which he mentions himself that I will send with you, مُمَدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, that I will protect you and help you with 1,000 angels. And just the point to take back, brothers and sisters, a very important point, especially for our youth here. The ayah of the Quran doesn't say nusra, it says mumiddukum. What does the word mumid in Arabic means? The word mumid means to enforce and help someone. Meaning, you begin the work and I'll help you end. Not that, can you write the essay for me? A lot of time my nieces and the nephew come and say, can you write the essay for me? I'm not going to write the essay for you. You write it and I'll check it for you. And I'll check the words if they're fine. Don't expect me to write that for you. So the Quran is saying, mumiddukum. You make the efforts and Allah will send the angels to help you do your work. And that's what happened. The Sahaba said, we raised our swords, the angels did their work. Ibn Abbas said, I was a big man, and the Ansari that I was fighting was a short little guy. SubhanAllah, these are the angels and these are the Sahaba of Rasulullah, and these are the books of hadith thing. These are not my words. And subhanAllah, he said, I saw a man so bigger than me that I could not even imagine a guy being bigger than me. And I knew it was angels, the malaika helping at that moment. So now, brothers and sisters, the second message of the miraculous stories of Ramadan is that a time when 313 were known to be defeated, and 1,000 men and women who came prepared with no plan B knew that they would be successful, and Allah gave victory to the Muslims. And not only victory, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called this Yawmul Furqan, the day of differentiation between right and wrong. So when everyone lost hope, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave hope to the Muslims and believers. So that's what Ramadan is. And last but not least, third story before I come to Zakat. The story of the victory of Mecca. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has moved to Medina. He's living there for 8 years. And the Prophet of Allah ﷺ is approximately 61 years of age. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ advises amongst his companions and his Sahaba, and he finally gets ready and he sits upon his camel al-Qaswa, and they begin to travel, and the Nabi of Allah ﷺ enters inside Mecca and he's victorious. And of course, this ayah of the Quran was revealed 2 years in advance. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, which was a foreshadowing in the battle of in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. But Rasulullah ﷺ entered Mecca victorious on the day of the victory of Mecca in the month of Ramadan. Fathul Mecca happened in Ramadan, a time where the Muslims were sort of thrown out of their houses. They were not made to leave, they were literally thrown out. Take your stuff. And some of them just left, and some of the things were done in such a way. And 8 years had passed when people knew that Muslims would have no place back in Mecca. The Nabi of Allah ﷺ is leaving Mecca, he's standing on the mountains of Jabal Abi Qubais and saying, oh Mecca, I love you. But if it was not for the people of Quraysh, I would have never left you. But subhanAllah, people could have never imagined that the Muslims who were made to leave Mecca and made hijrah toward Medina, they would ever return back victorious to Mecca. They could have never imagined. But the victory of Mecca happened in Ramadan. Which is my third story, concluding story, is that the month of Ramadan, brothers and sisters, is a time to get your miracles come true. Your dreams, your visions, your hopes, the things that you think are not possible, wallahi it is possible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, if we value the month of Ramadan like this, we'll be able to dedicate ourselves. Now it's going to be so hard to start talking about zakat. So many people give zakat in the month of Ramadan. Even though it is not a necessity, it is not necessary to give zakat only or just specify the month of Ramadan, but many a times people take this as an advantage because of the hasanat and the rewards being increased in many, many folds. The word zakat and sadaqah are both used in the Quran. I don't want to get into the linguistic of it. I want to keep it very, very short and brief because I want most of you to ask questions so I can answer them. Because when you talk a lot related to this subject, like speaking on mathematics is very difficult. It's just like, let's solve problems. Rather than me explaining all the algorithms and stuff like that, it's just get to the problems and let's start solving them. So I'm just going to give you a basic rundown of zakat itself. So zakat itself and sadaqat are both used in the Quran. The word sadaqah is a greater word, because sometimes zakat is also referred to as sadaqah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. The 8 types of individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala names in the Quran, and He says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ. Indeed, the sadaqat are for al-masakin, al-fuqara, al-masakin, wa ibn as-sabil, 8 types of individuals. According to the consensus of the scholars, this word sadaqah in this ayah of the Quran means your zakat, which means your fard and your obligatory charity that you have to give. So the word sadaqah comes from an Arabic root word which means sidq, And what does the word sidq mean in Arabic? It means truthfulness, right? They say this guy is very truthful. He's sadiq, he's sadiq, or the word of truthfulness. So how do you reconcile this? Meaning, how do you combine sadaqah, which is charity, to truthfulness? Like, how do you understand that? Like, sadaqah or sidq means to be truthful, and sadaqah means charity. So how do you combine this? So scholars of linguistic Arabic and of course Islamic scholars have done so much work. They say that when a man or a woman gives their mal and their wealth for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are being truthful in their iman and their promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, oh Allah, this mal and this wealth that you gave me, it is yours. Oh Allah, it's not mine. I'm not going to use it the way that I want. So for a person to give their mal, which a person loves the most, as the Quran itself mentions that gold and silver and horses and children are things that are just, things of muhabba and love for an individual. But to sacrifice that for the sake of Allah, it is the sidq, the truthfulness of the iman of that individual that, you know what? If no one actually knows that I'm actually taking out my zakat, but I'm doing it for the sake of Allah, that shows that there is iman and sidq of iman inside. And that's why sadaqah refers to particularly like this. So sadaqah is a general word. And then sadaqah has many types. One of them is called sadaqatun nafilah, which means an optional charity. Meaning you are sitting down and say, you know what, just for khair and barakah, I'm just going to take out some money. And I humbly request, it's not about the amount, it's about your intention. Even for youngsters, even if it's a little bit, you only have $1 a month or something like that, that you can spare from all of the other expenses that you have from your iPhone 10s and all the other expenses, mashallah, with no money that you guys have. So at least take out $1 or whatever you can, just so that you can take out something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So sadaqatun nafila is just for khair and barakah. The Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, give sadaqah, which is nafli, optional charity, very often, because it will take masa'ib and difficulties away from you, and it will give you death upon iman. It will give you death upon iman when you give sadaqah very often itself. So the first type of sadaqah is optional charity, that you just take out without any niyyah, without any particular need, you just take it out. And that is known as an optional charity. That optional charity can be given to the masjid, it can be given to a person who doesn't deserve to take zakat, it can be given to any individual or any entity at any time because there is no particular niyyah towards it. But when you come towards something known as sadaqatul wajibah, which means a mandatory or a necessary charity. What does that mean, mandatory or necessary charity? It has some types. Amongst one of them is a person takes a nadar, a person takes a vow, a promise, that if I, make it to that college, or if I do really good in that test, and if my parents don't find out I did that, I'm going to give like $10. So if you took those promises and that happened, that's a mandatory charity. That's a mandatory charity, which is sadaqatul wajibah. You made that mandatory upon you, but only after the fulfillment of that qasam or that nadar. Not before that, but after that fulfillment. And you must fulfill that and give that, and there are particular types of people who can receive that. Another type of sadaqatul wajibah is known as sadaqatul fitr, right? For example, if a person has enough money, I'll talk about that in just a few moments, at the time of Ramadan, and when it passes, when the month of Ramadan crosses by, every person in the household, be it an adult, be it not an adult, every particular child and an adult has to pay a certain amount. Even if they fasted, they did not fast, that is known as an amount of sadaqatul fitr must be given as charity, which is also as sadaqatul wajibah. Any child which is born before the Fajr Salah of the day of Eid, meaning if the child is born right before Fajr Salah on the day of Eid, you still have to pay sadaqatul fitr for them, and the amount I'll talk about in just a few moments. This is also known as sadaqatul wajibah. A person broke a promise, and now a person broke a promise, and now the Quran said the kafara of you breaking a promise is 3 things. Either you fast for 3 days, either you feed 10 people, or you clothe 10 people. So while feeding those 10 people, and you have to fulfill, that would be a sadaqatul wajibah, meaning it's the mandatory charity upon you because you did a certain act. So it's a little complicated. Another type of sadaqatul wajibah, which is a mandatory thing upon an individual, is zakat. What is zakat? The word zakat comes from an Arabic root word which refers to cleansing and purity. So the reality and the root and the essence of the word zakat, وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ, right? The Quran uses وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ. So the prophets were sent so that they can purify you. So the literal meaning of zakah, yaski or zakat in its term would mean to purify and to cleanse. According to some of the linguistics, the word zakat means to grow and to nourish. And subhanAllah, we already know this, that anything which is done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always grow and flourish and will always nourish more. So it's a means of cleansing, it is a means of purity, it is a means of growth, it is a means of nourishment. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that earn haram and give zakat so that will purify your wealth. So it means to purify the purified wealth. Your unpurified wealth does not become purified through zakat. So it's not a filter that I won the lotto and let me pay the zakat and it's halal upon me. Let me take the interest, buy and sell the alcohol and give the zakat and my wealth is permissible. So the word zakat itself means to purify the purified wealth. And I always love this statement Shaykh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi wrote in his kitab Fazailu Sadaqat. He said that the Sahaba used to cry more over their good deeds than we cry over our sins, just because they were not sure if it would be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sahaba used to cry over their good deeds more than we cry over our sins, because they were not sure if Allah would accept it. And Sahaba, the most purest of the wealth of the Sahaba, right? The most purest of our wealth cannot even reach the so-called most contaminated wealth of the Sahaba, but they were so afraid that would it be acceptable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. So we have to go that level up. So coming back to the word zakah itself, it means to purify. Not to purify the haram wealth, but to purify our earned wealth in a proper manner itself. Zakat itself is one of the most important pillars of Islam, because it requires the monetary devotion of an individual. And it obliges an individual to give their wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran talks about so many fadila. It talks about the transgression in the worst of the way. Zakat, literal terms, if you define zakat, it means to give a set amount ordained by Sharia that must be given with the intention of ibadah, with the intention of worship, from the wealth of an individual to the ownership of another individual who is eligible of receiving that money itself. There are many ahadith of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ giving a stern warning against those who keep their wealth and do not give it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So zakat is something very, very important, brothers and sisters. No one can ever say that I gave zakat and my money became less. Wallahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases and gives barakah for people who give zakat, and of course charities. For whom there is zakat. I'm a random person. How do I know if I have to give zakat? I go to school, I go to college. Yes, I have a little bit of money. How do I know if I have to give zakat? So there are 4 conditions of a person in order for a person to know that you have to give zakat or not. The first condition, alhamdulillah, that we all fit upon is the condition of iman and being a Muslim, right? Iman and faith, which is a Muslim. Number 2, there's a differences of opinion amongst the scholars. I'll mention both. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, a person must be adult. Adult means in Islam doesn't mean 18. It means a child, a boy or a girl, has reached an age of puberty, and they are the owners of that wealth, and then they have to give zakat. The second condition. According to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, that if a child is not adult, meaning has not reached puberty, but the wealth is their ownership, their parents, their relatives, or someone has left that money behind for them, then their guardians must pay zakat from their money, even though they are not adults. So Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi does not require adult as being a condition. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi requires that a person upon whom zakat is mandatory, first is Islam, second is that they have to be baligh, which means they have to be adult. They have to have the age of puberty. Number 3 is that they must be sane of their mind and their intellect. If there's an individual, a child or a person, and may Allah protect and preserve, who does not have an understanding of what is right and wrong, meaning they do not have enough mental skills or strength to differentiate between right and wrong, ahkamat and rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no sense of saneness inside of them. In that particular case, this person will not be held accountable. So a person who knows what is right and wrong, knows this is Islam and this is not Islam, meaning the reality. Not a person who's perfectly fine, scores a perfect 1600, goes to an Ivy League school and says, I don't know what Islam is. No, not that individual. A person who doesn't have the mental capacity or the intellect level of being able to function properly, a person who is not sane of mind, that's the third condition, that you must be sane. Number 4 is that person must be the owner, meaning the owner of the wealth for at least, which is of course the value of the quantum, meaning there's a minimum amount of wealth that you must be the owner of, and that amount is called in Arabic nisab. In English, we will refer to that as quantum. There has to be a specific amount. Is it $10? Is it $5? Is it $1,000? Is it 2,000? How much is it? There's a set amount that we learned from the life of the Prophet ﷺ that I'll talk about in just a few moments. But these are the 4 conditions: Muslim, adult, sane, and having certain amount of wealth for a certain amount of time. These are the 4 conditions for us to realize if zakat is upon me or not. Furthermore, the wealth must be fully owned by an individual. It's not that it's partially owned. No, that wealth has to be your ownership as an individual ownership. The wealth, which I'll talk about the quantum in just a few moments, it must be in excess of personal needs. Meaning your clothing, your household furniture, the house that you live inside, the car that you drive, the phones that you use, or the computer that you have for your school and your work. Meaning it should exceed the amount of your personal needs. And everyone's personal needs are more and less. So the amount that I'm talking about, the 4th point was the quantum, the nisab. They must have that much wealth. It's the access from your personal needs. Your furnitures, your home things, your clothing, it should be more than that. Number 3, another additional point furthermore is, it should be possessed by an individual, or it should be in the possession of that individual, that mal and that wealth, for the least time of a complete lunar calendar. Meaning, it must be in the possession of an individual for an entire lunar calendar. And I'm going to explain that in just a few moments of what that means. The lunar calendar has 10 days lesser than our regular Gregorian calendar. So, for example, the 365 days that we have in January to December, your Muharram to Dhul Hajjah has approximately 355 days. So your Islamic calendar runs around 10 days short every year from your other calendar. And that's why a few years ago, the Eid was, Ramadan was in the times much further, September, October, and now you must have seen it move back all the way towards May and June, and slowly coming back. So your wealth and the possession of that wealth, you must have the possession of the wealth for entire lunar calendar, meaning from one Islamic year to another Islamic year. And the wealth that you have should be monetary wealth, such as gold, silver, and cash, that I'll talk about in just a few moments. Just to note on a side, there is no zakat on assets that are not of a productive nature, even if these are in excess of one's need, such as a second car, right? It's not your need at all times, but you have 2 cars. You have a van that your entire family travels with, and you have other sedan that you travel when only you are driving to work. So it's something access to your need, but there's still no zakat upon it because it's for your personal needs. But when that second car becomes a trade or a business, meaning you want to sell it, then it will become a means of zakat that I'll talk about in just a few moments. But you might have things that are not a productive nature to you, but they are access to you, but there is no zakat upon these, such as cars, utensils, furnitures, and stuff like that. There will be nothing upon him. Also, there is no zakat on those whose short-time liabilities do immediately exceed or equal their assets. This is a very important point. There is no zakat upon those individuals who have liabilities. What is a liability? Liability means that you owe someone something, right? You have to return something to someone. It's not yours, you need to give someone something back. But your liabilities must be short-term. How do you define short-term liability and long-term liability? A short-term liability means that within the next 12 months you need to give something back to someone. That's your short-term liability. So you borrowed $500 from someone and you said, you know what, inshallah before the end of the year I'll give it to you. When the time of zakat comes, you think you have like $600 in your pocket. And you say, you know what, I have to give 500 back. So you subtract those 500 from your 600 and you only have 100. That means you won't be giving zakat that year. So that means that you can deduct, subtract your short-term liabilities. Short-term liabilities mean the money or the wealth that you have promised to return in a period of 1 year. Long-term means more than 12 months. So your home mortgages, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, you cannot deduct any of those. You cannot deduct that. If you deduct your home mortgages, then no one will pay zakat, right? So there's no deduction of your home mortgages. Your car payments, there's no deduction of your car payments. If you're a student and you're paying off your student loans, you can only deduct the amount that you will be paying for the next 12 months. For sure that you will be paying more than the 12 months of the payments, you cannot deduct. Your house rent and bills, you cannot deduct because the services that you have not taken cannot be deducted. So a lot of time people say, yeah, can I deduct my rent for the next 12 months? No, you can't. Because you never lived in the house for the next 12 months. You never gave the gas for the next 12 months. So you cannot deduct the services that have not been taken. The only thing that you can deduct as a liability are those things that you actually told someone, inshallah in 1 year I'll give you the money back, brother. I took 5,000 from you, inshallah I will give you this much back in less than 1 year. That thing, the total amount can be deducted because it's a short-term liability. Long-term liabilities cannot be, and you can inshallah think about questions and ask me at the end as much as you can, because sometimes it's just confusing for me to just say stuff here. You might not be understanding what I'm saying. So for example, let me give you an example. A person has $1,000 in silver at hand, but has $1,200 in debt. Credit card debts and other things that you are paying over time does not count. The amounts that you're going to be paying for sure within the 12 months, yes. The services if you have already taken, that's also complicated. We'll talk about that in the questions at the end. Important, long-term loans or long-term liabilities such as house mortgages, car loans, student loans are not to be used in this calculation. You cannot deduct these. However, the yearly payments which may be due that you are paying for your student loans can be. Now, what types of wealth do I have upon which zakat is fard? I'll use Arabic and English together and I'll make a new word called your zakatable wealth. So your zakatable wealth. What is your zakat? You're not gonna find that in the dictionary. But what is your zakatable wealth? Right? I have so many things. I have a car, a watch, I have a phone. These are all possession. They are worth something. But which things amongst these are zakatable wealth? Right? Which things are zakatable in things that I have in my life? So individually, there are a few things for us to know. Number one, gold and silver. Be it in the form of jewelry, utensils, or anything that you have, if it's more than 12 carats of gold or silver. Meaning if it's more than half of it is pure gold or silver, then it will be considered as value. If it's lesser than 12 carats, that means it has no essential possession of being gold. So gold and silver, be it in any any type, in any form. That's your first type of your zakatable wealth. So I have actually a chart, maybe I'm going to share with you and then you can post it on your website or something, that you can actually fill out a form, easy. So it says gold and then you just fill out the amount. It's going to be inshallah, make it very easy for you inshallah. So the first type of zakatable wealth. So for any individual personally, the day that you're calculating your zakat, number one, look at your gold and silver. How much gold and silver do I have at my house at the moment? And the gold and silver, the amount of it is not from the day that you bought it, not the day that you saw it was online. No. The day that you're giving zakat, you will check the value of the gold that day. If it's 22 carats, 21 carats, it will depend upon the carats of the gold itself. Number two type of zakatable wealth is your cash, your checking, and your saving balances. And if I say saving balances, you're going to hold me accountable, or you said, oh, saving, that means it's jais to have saving accounts. No, you're not allowed to have saving accounts. If you do have them, then consult with your local scholars and get a fatwa from them. Inshallah, they'll be able to. Usually when I travel to other places, I tell them to resort to your local scholars and ask them for what they will tell you. So your cash and your checking and your saving, that's your second zakatable wealth. So first you're going to get your gold together. Second, you're going to find out, I got this much money in my pocket, I got this much money in my checking, in my saving. You're going to write that, that's your zakatable. You're just totaling everything first. Number three, the loans that you lent others. Someone came, your cousin came, your aunt came, your uncle came and said, can you let me borrow this much money? And they said, inshallah, I'll give you back in a year or 2 or 3 or whatever it is, which is known as qarza hasana, that you lend them a loan without any interest. This loan that you know that you will get back, maybe it's in few years, it's still your asset. You must give zakat on it every year. The time that you forget, the time that you figure out that you're not going to get this money anywhere, right? And that's usually 90% of the cases. The time that you figure out that you're not going to get your money back from your cousins, then at that time that you can stop giving zakat upon it. So as long as you have hope, then you have to give zakat. Sheikh Puri came a few years ago and someone asked him, he said, you know what qarza hasana means? Hasana means to give someone a favor without asking him interest. So he combined the Urdu word hasna. Hasana or hasna in Urdu means to smile and laugh at someone. So he said qarza hasana means when you give someone qarz and then you ask them and they just laugh at you. Right. Qarza hasana, they laugh it off at you. Like, yeah, right, I'm going to give that back. So the third type of assets that we must count as zakatable asset is loans that you lent others knowing that you're going to get back. You must count that. And you may have to give zakat upon these for multiple years. They may tell you, I'm going to give it this year, the next year, the next year. You'll have to pay zakat upon that. That doesn't mean to start lending people money. Inshallah, this will always help for others if you can do it, but of course with all the precautions. Number 4, are the merchandises of your business. What does that mean? A person has a pharmacy, a person has a grocery store, a person has a clothing shop, and they have inventory inside this place. And they own all this inventory. So the pharmacy has the pharmacy medicines equal to $50,000. The clothing equal $20,000. Meaning these are the value of the assets or the merchandises that they have. That merchandise is also your zakatable wealth. But what type of value will you put for your merchandise? There are 3 values of merchandise. Your buying price, your selling price, and your wholesale price. So generally, it would be the selling price, but it would be too difficult to monitor every single thing. So the scholars have suggested that if you have merchandise, which is in bulk numbers, you can have a wholesale price. So if I was to sell the entire bulk at once, how much money would I get for my inventory? So you can count that. So the 4th type of zakatable wealth is known as your merchandise, which in Arabic is known as malut tijarat, the wealth that you have put in your investments and your tijara itself. Number 5 is livestock. We usually don't have things like that, so I'm just going to leave that to the side. Number 6 is income of properties that you have. Now this is a little difficult and complicated. Properties are of many, many types. A property that you own completely, and it's owned for you for the reasons of rental, meaning you own this property, you don't want to sell this, and you have just rented this property and you're getting the rent from this. So if the property is worth $1 million, you don't pay zakat upon the $1 million worth of that property. You only pay the zakat on the rent that is acquired from that property, because you don't have the intention of selling that property. You are just earning the value of the rent itself. But now the rent will have expense, taxes that you are paying. You're trying to get the work done. So after the deduction of your taxes and all that we can talk about afterwards. So for the rental property, you only pay zakat upon the rent that is achieved or taken, rather than the amount of the entire property itself. That's for the rental value. Going to properties now. If you have a land or a house or a property, it could be of 3 intentions. The first day that you were signing the dotted line, you had the intention of buying this property so that you can keep it for yourself, give it to your child, and just keep it for as long as you want. Or, I got extra money in my pocket, I'll just keep it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So every single year when the time of zakat comes, there is no zakat on that property, because you did not have the intention of reselling or buying it for the reason of business itself. You had the intention of either keeping it, not really sure what I'm going to do with it, and you were not really sure about doing whatever you have to do. The day that you were signing the dotted line, you had this firm intention. And you had that intention that, you know what, I'm going to flip it as soon as I get a better price for it. As soon as I get a better price, I'm going to sell this property. So when the day of zakat comes and you're calculating your zakat, you're going to pay the zakat on the market face value of that property that day. Even though it's not sold. You may say, oh, it's still in the market, it's not sold. No, that's your zakatable asset. That is your asset that you must pay upon as well. That's something that you remember. A person, third person is, I'm not sure. I may sell it, I may keep it. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if I sell it or I'll keep it, like half and half. And again, I say, brothers and sisters, this is your ta'alluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is no mufti giving you a fatwa. We have to be accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of time people change intention. Say, Mufti sahab, kis tarah nahi de sakte? Tell me something that I don't have to give, right? And a lot of time people say this, and I'm going to come to a few things that I'll share in just a few moments. So you yourself know from your own hearts what you did the day that you signed that property. So at the end of the day, you ask your own self, what was my niyat? Don't ask your imam sahab and try to put him inside trouble and say, you know what, Mufti sahab, kaise maaf karayenge? Like, how can you do this? Even though bichara don't even get a share of that, forgiveness from all that zakat that he gets for you. So, don't put ulama in a situation. So you are that individual who have to make the decision of what was my niyat when I brought that property. So if your niyat was, you're not really sure, khair, there's no zakat on you till the day that you sell it and you achieve the money from this. That's something related to property. If it's an open land, exactly the same thing. A lot of time people buy open lands and properties. And they say, you know what, back home, we'll just buy some land, build the house sometimes, maybe give it to a child, or maybe out of cheeky mat mili and get some better price, we'll sell it. But if you have the firm intention of selling, then please give zakat on it. If you don't have that intention, you're just waiting to build something, give it to someone, then there is no zakat upon that. Just keep that in mind as well. Income which is derived from hiring of businesses, cars and vans, all of them as well. So I'll take that to a next level to understand. Your stocks in the market. Stocks are bought for two reasons. Stocks are bought for reason of increment or increasing of the value of the stocks, or either to achieve dividends or sort of rental from your stocks. So make it easy for those who are not involved in stock markets. You buy a stock for $10 for two reasons. You buy it that if it becomes 50, I'll sell it. A higher price. Second thing is that, you know what, I'm going to keep this. This is a solid stock. I'm going to keep this and it will give me dividend. Every year it's going to give me a profit. Even though the value is increasing, but every year they give me a dividend, meaning a portion of the profit that the stock is providing for me. If you have the first intention, you have the stock for the reason of flipping for a higher price, then the day that you are giving zakat, you must calculate the face value of that stock and give zakat on its entire value. If you have the stock for the reason of dividend and not for the reason of it value going up and flipping it, yeah, you may do it, but the main reason is dividend, you don't pay zakat on its value, you only pay zakat on the dividend that you achieved. It is very similar to your properties, which is rental property, right? If a rental property is there to flip and make money, then you make zakat on it. If it's just for the reason of rent, then you don't pay on it. I'm sorry, it is so complicated, I don't even know how to explain this properly, but hope this is it. Types of wealth in which there is no zakat, right? These were all zakatable assets. Now I'm going to talk about some of the assets that you have. These are valuable, but there is no zakat on them. It's not going to count as the plus marks on your zakatable chart. Any metal that you have beside gold and silver, yes, platinum and white gold does count as white gold and gold itself. There is zakat upon it. Other metals, beside these, there is no zakat upon them. Fixtures, fittings, machineries, factories, delivery vehicles, operational aspects of your business. You have a business, you have an office, you have computers, you have trucks and stuff like that, meaning things that are operational for your business. There's no zakat upon them. The fixture of your business, the operational needs of your business, these are the machinery of your factory, there's no zakat upon them, right? So the fixtures and the fittings of your business does not have any zakat upon it. Number 3, diamonds, pearls, and other precious and semi-precious stones which are bought for personal use, there is no zakat upon them. But if they are for the reason of business and transaction, then they will be considered as merchandise. There will be zakat on it. That will be the number 4th point that I mentioned in your zakatable wealth. But if you have diamonds and pearls, which are stones which are precious and semi-precious, there is no zakat upon that. There is no zakat upon imitation jewelry, right? There's no zakat upon imitation jewelry, which is not real. Living quarters, household furniture, personal clothing, whether they are in use or you use them once a year, all of these things, there is no zakat upon these things. Now coming back towards hawl and quantum. Is it getting boring? Can we give a little break? Is everyone's okay? All right, can we still go? I have a little bit more left, inshallah. So 2 things now. Nisab, which is quantum, how do I know how much value? And what is the hawl? What is the period that I must figure out? The best way, as what I do for myself personally, and I'll share that with you as well. Shaykh Taqi Usmani, our teacher, Damat Barakatum, also mentioned this, that the best way to give your zakat is to fix one Islamic date to be the day of your zakat. So for example, if you usually give zakat in Ramadan, don't say, Bhai, Ramadan is my time of zakat. No. That's not your date. That's a month. Give me a date. 5, 10, 15, 20, 27th, whatever it is. Or 1st of Muharram or 1st of Dhul Hijjah. It doesn't have to be. Fix one Islamic date to be the day of your zakat. It has to be your date of zakat. And then you wait for the entire year to pass till that next year, that same date comes, and you will audit yourself, and that is known as one hawl. The word hawl, which is a surrounding moment, that is what is known as one hawl itself. So for example, just a quick example, Abdullah owns a nisab wealth of $400 in the month of Sha'ban right now in 1438. And he did not owe anything prior to this as wealth. He continues to own wealth up and down, up and down. The next year, when the 1st of Sha'ban comes, which is 1439 this year, he will calculate whatever he has in his possession. And that makes things very, very easy for him. And then let me explain to you how. Every single dollar, money and wealth that you earn, you cannot know if it's for 1 year or not, right? That's not possible. Every dollar that you earn, you cannot mark it, this is 90 days left or 30 days. You cannot mark every single thing. So subhanAllah, deen is very easy for us. The Quran, the Sharia is so easy for us. The best way to do it is fix one date as the date of your wealth. So for example, 15th Ramadan. 15th Ramadan, you sat down and said, you know what, my gold and silver for my wife and everything in my family is equal to 20,000. My cash is equal to 20,000. My assets and merchandise that I own someone is this much. So I have $50,000 as my wealth, right? That's what I calculated. Now the entire year is passing by. 1 month, 2 months, my monthly salary is coming, my house rent is going, my expenses are going left and right, the whole year. Don't worry about that fluctuation. Do not worry about any of that fluctuation. You do not have to keep yourself, a PL list every single month. You don't have to do any profit loss listing. That's perfectly fine. Let the entire year pass. When the next year comes and the 15th of Ramadan hits, that's the day you are going to sit down. And you're going to figure out what's your assets. If it's 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, you will give zakat according to that very day. May Allah forgive if someone lost all of their wealth on the 14th of Ramadan. Then they don't have to give zakat the next day. Even though they had it for the entire year, less than 1 day. Or if 1 day before the zakat day came, a person received a huge check, And now the next day in their asset or valuable assets, that check will be also added, even though he or she may say, but it's only one day that I had that money. No, it's your assets. And that day is something that counts. And forgive me, these are no ideas that I'm telling you, but subhanAllah, we have heard of stories where the men give the hiba, a gift of their wealth, a day before their zakat becomes mandatory to their wives. And the wives do the same thing a day before that. How much are they going to deceive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The one who gave them so much, wallahi, is it this, subhanAllah? And just to make it very clear, and that's why also for our sisters and mothers, they ask this question a lot. I bought this jewelry set 6 months ago. It's not even been a year since I have this jewelry set. No, you still have to give zakat on it. Why? Because your rest of the wealth is more than the quantum. And you had rest of the money for more than a year. So even the additional money that comes in or the jewelry that comes in just fits inside your assets. Every single wealth doesn't have to pass a year. Your quantum has to pass a year. Now what is the quantum? What is the nisab? What is that minimum money that you must have? According to Arabic terminologies, the amount of nisab according to gold is 87.48 grams. According to hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And according to silver, it's 612.36 grams of silver. So what's the rate? What's the ratio price of it? So I just actually checked before I came. The price of the nisab for today, 429.18. For the price of silver, the nisab for today is $327.21. And the nisab of gold, the quantum is $3,728.81. There's a huge difference. There's like $3,400 difference between the two nisabs. It is mentioned, and this is a very debatable topic, I'm not going to even go into it, is that at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ratio of difference between gold and silver was 7-1. At the time of Rasulullah, historically. That's why the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us these two numbers, right? 87 and 612. So all the mathematicians who are sitting here can easily do 1-7 ratio, right? That's what it was at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they were both of the same value. 87.48 was the same value as 612.35. So the price fluctuation of silver and gold at that time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 7-1. But now the ratio of gold to silver is, I think, 70 to 1, or even more than that, like 100 to 1. Meaning it has skyrocketed. So now, what nisab are we supposed to take, right? That's the big question now. I'm not even going to get to it. Ask Mufti Sahib afterwards. So usually, the usual fatwa that is given is anfa' lil fuqara. You will use that amount which is more beneficial for the poor of the ummah. You will use that amount, which is the amount which will be beneficial for the poor of the ummah. And what is that amount? It's the lesser amount. Meaning, if you use the lesser amount, more people will give zakat. And more people can benefit. But the only question now is that the amount of quantum now doesn't even pay your rent for 2 weeks. $327 don't even pay your rent for 2 weeks. It's almost the amount of a price of one qurbani, one goat. So can we really use that or not? That's a debatable topic. I'll keep that on a later discussion. If you want to talk about that, inshallah, we can sit separately and talk about it. But the general fatwa, verdict that is given, is that we will use the quantum of silver, and that is $327. So going back to whatever I told you already, if your zakatable wealth and your assets and everything that you have in your possession, subtracting your liabilities, which are short-term liabilities, you have more than $327.21 on the 15th of Ramadan after your calculations, then you have to give zakat on your wealth. That is something which is very simple for us to understand. Gather all your zakatable wealth, deduct your liabilities that you have which are short-term. If your money that comes out of that is more than the quantum of silver, that is $327, then you have to give zakat on your entire wealth. And that is 1/40th, which is 2.5% of your wealth must be given. And of course, from the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, we can continuously see this. To whom can we give our zakat? This is a long topic. It can be given to fuqara, masakin, which means people, individuals who are in desperate need and have nothing. Sometimes you will find people who have their homes. They have a car, they have a motorcycle or rickshaw, whatever it is, but they don't have anything to live upon. They can also take. So al-fuqara in Quran means those who have, as they say, guzare ka kaam, meaning they have enough that they can get their day-to-day run, but they don't have more than the amount of nisab in their possession. They can also take zakat. Al-masakin means kuch bhi nahi bichare ke paas. They have nothing, no home, no house, nothing. That is considered as masakin. So at the end of the day, when you are giving zakat to someone, you must figure out that he or she must not have more than the amount of nisab. And that is $327. I personally, from the past few years, have been not debating, but speaking to my teachers and asking them, why can we not use gold? Because when we see $327, you can barely give someone money, right? You can barely find someone. Yes, don't get me wrong, there's the whole world which is out there which doesn't have 32,000 rupees and $327, but it becomes very difficult. If you take the nisab of gold, $3,000, it makes more easier of a sense that you can provide, but wallahu alam, we'll leave it to the side. So zakat should be given to an individual who does not have the possession of quantum, which means the nisab. They don't have to have the ownership of it for the entire year. Just the day that you're giving zakat to them, they should not have that money. So let me give you a quick example. A lot of time people ask me and say, you know what, I have a brother and a sister who can barely make a living. They're back home in Pakistan or India and Bangladesh or Afghanistan, whatever they are, and they have like 30, 40,000 rupees already saved up to get their daughters married, but they don't have enough to get her completely married, meaning it's barely enough to feed the people. So how can we do? Can we give them zakat? No, we can't. Why? Because the mom and dad already has 30, 40,000 rupees. The thing you can do at that time is that if the child is adult, meaning the boy or the girl who is adult, give zakat directly to that boy or girl. They can take the possession because they can take that as a recipient of zakat itself. But do not force zakat, brothers and sisters. Last year I was sitting with a family. Allah has blessed them with a lot of wealth. And subhanAllah, they asked me, can we give it to our family members, zakat? I said, you can't. Your family members have money, meaning they have more than 35, 40,000 rupees. You can't give them zakat. The guy goes, Mufti sahab, kuch to kare, kuch to kare. And he kept on pushing me like that. He's like, why don't you do something? Why don't you do it? I got mad. So I said, you know what? Your zakat is only 2.5%. Where are you going to take the 97.5 that is in your pocket in your bank? Why don't you pull out 1% from that and give it to your brothers and sisters? Are we so hard-hearted that we want to pull away from what Allah and Rasul has designated for the poor and we want to force it for our relatives? Come on. What are we going to do with the 97.5 that we have in our own pockets? And we're not using it except for our own lusts and desires. So use it appropriately. And whatever is 2.5, please make sure that you're giving to those who are eligible. It's very important. Sometimes we say we will fulfill our responsibility, mashallah is done. A lot of youngsters are here. I'm gonna say one point. Even though the entire electronic media and things have made things so easy, you sit on your computer, you click your button, your credit card is done, and your zabiyah is done somewhere else. Your zakat is paid. Things have become very easy. It's good. Make deen easy is easy. But if you make it so easy that you do not participate in this amal, you will never learn the value of these actions. Wallahi, I'm afraid. I know I like that deen is becoming easy in which you can easily click a button, your zakat is paid. But where will you ever learn the fruits of going and searching a poor individual, seeing their condition and giving them? Wallahi, it's something beautiful. So please, along with giving your zakat, search for people who are in need. You will find such people, which will be a great lesson for your life itself.
When you call somebody like what you're saying, you're asking a couple of people, do they have $30,000, $40,000? Yes or no?
Rupees.
Rupees, yes.
Yeah.
So, agar wo kahenge nahi hai, what we should do?
So if a person,
I'm asking them, I'm not clicking, but I'm asking
So if you're i'tamad, if you're content by doing that, then inshallah we are free. But going back to the point is, giving zakat is fard. And for us to do all the due diligence is our responsibility. I'm not saying go check their tax returns. I'm not saying go inside their PayPal accounts and see how much they have. No, don't go spy upon the individual. Everyone has some sort of izzat and respect. But at least have someone justify that this person is in need. Dil ka itminan, getting the sukoon of your heart. So for example, let me give you a quick example. I was a part of one of the masjids in distributing zakat for them, one of the masjids in Long Island. So I was given the responsibilities to go over applications. I'm going through applications. They had 2 witnesses, find 2 witnesses, and get 2 people who can vouch on your behalf that you are in need and stuff like that, like the whole regular zakat application. So I'm going through this. I don't feel content. I said, you know what, I'm going to give a call. I picked up the phone and I said, you know what, Assalamu alaikum, so-called lady's name is written. Can I please speak to her? She has asked for zakat help from the masjid. The husband picked up and he said she is not home. I said, are you the husband? He said, yes. I said, I just have a quick question that she has asked for some zakat from the masjid and I want to clarify some things. He said, yeah, sure, we did apply for it. I said, how much gold do you have at home? So he said, beta, I think she just has like 10, 10 10 kade hain, wo pure 7 tole bhi nahi hai. So he said that my wife only has 10 bangles, they're not even a dozen, meaning they're not even 12, and they don't even equal about like 6 or 7 tolas of gold, which is about like $2,500–3,000. They, from their mind, thought that they were eligible, right? Many people don't even know that they're eligible or not. So bichare miskeen don't even know, and we from our side fall short and we also give. Because sometimes when you ask your relative, can you check from someone who's zakat eligible? They don't even know how to find out who's zakat eligible. So I would request, and humbly request, I'm not saying I'm making it difficult for you, but I want this to be as ibadah for us, to make sure that we find, and wallahi there are people who are in need, and you will find people who are in need, that you'll find individuals who will be in need, but at the end of the day, it's not about going inside their houses and checking what they have, it's about your contentment at the end of the day. How sakoon and mutmin you are from your due diligence of an individual. You tried your best, you found from your few relatives who live around and they said, you know what, I think yaar unke ghar mein kuch bhi nahi hai. I think that they don't have anything in their house, they're living like this, they're in that condition. So if you feel content, then you can take it further. Going further quickly, I'm going to finish off. Zakat can be given to a brother, can be given to a sister, can be given to a nephew, a niece, uncle, aunt, both paternals and maternal from mother's and father's side. It can be given to a stepfather, a stepmother. It can be given to your father-in-law and mother-in-law only if you're in good terms with them, provided that you do not have nisab. It doesn't mean good terms, bad terms. You should always be in good terms with them. And I dislike using father and mother-in-law, but I use it here because to explain the relationships. Otherwise, for those who are married, your father-in-law is your father, and your mother-in-law is your mother. These in-laws and outlaw stuff is completely garbage. They are your parents, and keep them as parents. For brothers and sisters, because that's how muhabbat is. That's what parents are, and that's how beautiful things go further. So these people can take zakat. Those who cannot take zakat are the people who are from the family of Sayyid, meaning the families of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, which are listed in few families. Zakat cannot be given to immediate, ascending, and descending relative, which means father, grandfather, son, grandson. You cannot give zakat to ascending and descending relative. You cannot give it to daughter. You cannot give it to the mother. So ascending and descending relatives cannot also take zakat. Wife and husband cannot give zakat to one another as well. And of course, zakat as masraf should be given to an individual and be made their ownership. And this is very, very important before I will finish. The most important point for zakat, brothers and sisters, is zakat must become the ownership of the recipient without any condition. You must make that person the owner of it. So for example, this is a very general example that I'm giving. A person asked me and said, you know what, Allah has blessed me with so much money, I want to open up a pharmacy in Pakistan or somewhere else where people will take free medicines from a zakat run pharmacy. I say, you can't do that. He said, why? I said, many people who may come to that pharmacy and take that medicine may not be zakat eligible. And even if a portion of your zakat is given to those individuals who are not eligible, that means they are sinful and you are sinful. So making sure that, yes, is it possible to run a zakat, run pharmacy through zakat? Yes, it is possible. It is possible. Consult with your scholars, sit with the ulama, and they will tell you the ways to how, not make it halal, but make it permissible of how to do these things properly. But generally, the idea is, when you give zakat, it must become the ownership of an individual. And that's why a few years ago, you might differ with me or not, there was a big commotion in America where a fatwa was published by one of the scholars that I won't give a name. He said that zakat can be given to masjid for its building and its construction because it's considered as fi sabilillah. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. One of the things says, fi sabilillah, for the path of Allah. So when we live in a countries which is not dominantly Muslims, doing something as a masjid is fi sabilillah, is for the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was his interpretation. Majority of the scholars disagree. Why? Because masjid is not an individual person's ownership. So the organization cannot take zakat, it has to be done by individual. Yes, the masjid can collect the zakat and then hand over to individuals, which is a huge responsibility, but the entity of a masjid cannot be. You cannot pay someone their daily wages through zakat. You cannot pay compensation of people through zakat, because zakat is something which is an ownership. I think we have 13 minutes left. Brothers must have questions, so forgive me, I lasted for so long and you guys stayed here. Do you have food after this? That's why everyone stayed? But alhamdulillah, that's amazing to see everyone. No, we have refreshments. Don't worry about it. I know, we didn't grab the guy who sent the text message.
401k.
Oh, yeah, subhanallah. So 401ks are those plans which are optional plans. Anyone who gets a 401k is actually getting inside an RIA by himself or herself individually. It's an optional plan. Anything which is an optional plan must have zakat upon it. Anything which is forced, for example, 403b. If you're a state worker, you must give your money to your retirement plan. The 403 is a must plan. 401k is a plan which is an optional plan. So any plan which is mandatory upon an individual, there's no zakat upon it, unless it becomes mature and you receive it back. Anything which is an optional IRA, such as a 401k, you have to give zakat. Now, when do you have to give zakat? 401k is of two types. You are investing your portion and you have your company putting inside. Some of the money is vested and some of them is not vested. The amount of money that is vested from both sides is something which is considered to be zakatable wealth. When do you give zakat upon it? Do you give it every year? Do you give it after it becomes mature? Or when do you give zakat itself? There are three opinions. Number one opinion, which is I guess the lightest or the most not recommended opinion is that you will start to give zakat after it becomes mature and becomes your possession. That's the least acceptable, but I'm sharing with you because it's one of the opinions of the scholars that we cannot rush underneath the carpet. So you can start giving zakat after it becomes mature. No one agrees, few agree upon it. The other two opinion of the scholars are that every single year at the end of the time, like the 15th of Ramadan, when you're calculating your zakat, you will also check the vested amount of your 401k from your side and from your company side, and you will add this in your zakatable assets. And you will pay zakat every single year upon it, even though you might not have the full possession on it. If you take it out, you pay 30-40% fines and taxes, that's perfectly fine. No, you're not taking it out, it's there, it's an optional charity, you have to give zakat upon it every year. The second opinion, the second option is that every single year at the time of your 15th of Ramadan, when you're calculating your zakat, you will calculate that amount, but you will not give zakat, but you will give zakat once you mature the 401k for all of your previous years. Maaf nahi hai, dene padenge, but you will give it once you have liquid in your hand, and you will give it for all of your previous years. Deduct karne honge nahi, you can only deduct taxes and fines if you take it out. If you're not taking it out, that means you're not paying taxes and fines. So if you're not paying taxes and fine, how can you deduct something that you are not actually paying? Yes.
Give zakat charitable organizations?
Sure, Jazakallah khair. So there are a lot of organizations which do collect zakat as charity. Yes, they can definitely be, but there's only one thing that I usually speak to most of these organizations, and that is that they have a 7 to 8% corporate cut from that zakat money for their own organizational needs.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there a website where you can check their expenses?
Yes. So in that case, if you really want to support a certain organization, then make sure that you're giving 7 to 8% more of your zakat because they are cutting that much. There are few organizations, we don't endorse anything from the member, you can find out or you can ask individual people that they use 100% of their charities as zakat money as money to be given, and the money that they use for their corporate company are the regular charities, meaning sadaqatun nafila, an optional charity. An optional charity can be used as a corporate expense, but zakat cannot be. Some scholars do give ijaza. So for example, the ayah of the Quran, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ. They take that as an option. That amilin means people who are working to collect zakat. So the other scholars say that وَالْعَامِلِينَ refers to a person designated by the government who's collecting the zakat and spreading it amongst the fuqara as an entire government or as governance. Organizations and companies which are Fortune 500 and corporate American companies or any companies, they cannot be considered as a governing body which comes in the ayah of the Quran, wal amilin. So there's a difference. So if a person wants to support certain organization, then they would have to provide that percent more. That's my opinion, that I usually tell others to be on a safe side. But if you find someone, Mufti Sahib inshallah, I refer to him, if you can, then some scholars say, you know what, it's fine as well. But I personally, if someone was to ask me, I would say add the amount of percentage that is cut from them.
On the golden portion, when you say that gold or silver, is there, like let's say the wife or a sister has for their personal use, is that they have to pay the zakat or some other, was my understanding, the one that you are not using it
Sure.
all the time for the access?
Sure. So Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi is of the opinion that silver or gold or jewelry that is of a continuous usage on daily basis, there is no zakat upon it. But according to Imam Abu Hanifa and majority of the scholars, the gold that is in your possession, which may be of use every day or not everyday use, will be considered as zakatable asset. Only Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi is of the opinion, right, Muslim? Imam Shafi rahmatullah is of the opinion that you do not have to give zakat upon those jewelry that you're using every single day. But Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi and majority of the scholars are of the opinion that you have to give zakat even on that. Yes.
मुफ्ती साहब मुझे मेरे भाई के मुझ पे पैसे थे।
जी
मैंने उनको पिछले साल कहा था कि मैंने देने हैं आप
जी
वो पैसे मैंने किसी के साथ रखे हुए थे उसने मेरे को पैसे नहीं दिए तो अभी एक साल के बाद वो मेरे को कह रहा है कि मैं ये पैसे दे रहा हूँ तो इस पे मैं ज़कात पे करूँ
तो आपने उसके पास क्यों रखाए हुए थे किसी और बंदे के पास?
उस वक्त उसने कहा था मेरे को ज़रूरत है तो मैंने दिए थे
तो आपने उसको दिए थे, आप आगे से पैसे, अगर आपने आगे किसी को कर्जा देना वापस था तो उसके ऊपर आपके ऊपर ज़कात नहीं आएगी क्योंकि आप खुद भी मकरूज थे उस टाइम। खैर इंशाअल्लाह। यस।
Now, for the nisab, you say you're going to make due diligence if a brother or sister is coming and asking, let's say some brothers and sisters come, like you said with the masjid, and sort of sometimes come in this kind of situation, like some people come, they say, I don't have the money for the rent. Money is coming, all right, there is one. And a lot of time, yes, you could check, but again, it's very difficult to have the time to check it out to see if he's, first of all, that individual is short on the rent or some other thing. Can you pay that?
So as I mentioned to the brother before, that it all depends upon the itminan and the contentment of your heart. How much can you check and how much do you feel comfortable? At the end of the day, it's your decision. It's your ta'alluq and your amal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person from their own side and perspective says, you know what, whatever I had to ask, I asked. Whatever they had to tell me, they told me, and I feel content, and inshallah I will give it to them. So it's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the end of the day, as that I mentioned, is that it's very hard for an individual to personally check everyone's individual assets and their backgrounds. But whatever few questions that a person feels comfortable, and I would say this, please, this is a good point that our teachers used to say, and they used to say this in Urdu. I'll translate that in Urdu and English. They used to say कि भाई किसी की दुनिया बनाते बनाते अपनी आखरत ना बिगाड़ देना. He said, do not make someone's dunya and destroy your akhirah. Someone is benefiting in dunya and you are destroying your akhirah. That's the worst thing that someone can do. Someone made their dunya and I lost my akhirah. Right? That's the worst decision that I can do, right? So in that very case, yes, we should not become so harsh upon people that we leave the level of decency and comfort for people. But at the end of the day, this is ibadah, it is worship. And with your few questions, if you feel comfortable that so-and-so is in need and your heart is of contentment, inshallah, this is the qabuliyat from Allah that you can give them. Yes, brother.
Property that this one owns, living in that property, he has a rental income.
Sure.
That's also considered to be tax.
Right, so if a person lives in a property where they are living as well and they're also achieving rent as well, that rent at the end of the day will be counted as their cash and their assets. So at the end of the day, when you're counting your cash, your check, and your savings, it will just be added onto that amount itself and will be considered like that.
Last question was, the taxes need to be paid from that property, from the owner. That need to be deducted.
Sure, so if you have any taxes that must be paid within a month's period, or any expense that is due within a month's period, can be deducted. So if you have something coming in within a month's period, so for example, I think many of the taxes are paid in August, you can pay in July. So for example, if someone is taking their zakat out in June, then deductions in July can be done in June itself, yes. So anything that is due within the month's period, your taxes and everything can be deducted as well, yes.
When you go to the tax, let's say I have a house and I have to pay the tax next month. I don't have the money and I don't see any other now. Just I mean, make
Sure.
example. If I don't pay, they put the lien on my house and then they take it out. Can I take a zakat money? Ask some brothers to help me because if I don't pay my taxes and I don't see any other income, they say if I don't pay, they take my house. And if I take that one, how's that?
Before you respond to it, there is something that you said, that it's on a certain date that you compute your zakat. Do you have a year to pay that zakat now, or you have to pay it right there and then?
Right. So just to quickly go into your question, the best thing is to pay zakat as quickly as possible. If a person was to pay your zakat even in advance, it's also okay. A person can pay their zakat in advance as well. So for example, a person is taking out $100 a month. And at the end of the time that you're calculating your zakat, you have $1,200 in your pocket, and you calculate your zakat to be $1,500, you just add those $300 and you add it. Now from the day that you have to pay zakat, because you have already used that asset, it is required, it's recommended that a person should not wait for an entire year, but should pay as quickly as possible. Or at least separate the amount of zakat from their possession and then slowly give it to the people whenever they find people in need. But at least that much money should be separated from their own assets. Because the next year will be the assets for the next running year, but the money that we have taken out as zakat is from that previous year itself. In that very particular case, we will have to see the scenario. It will have to be seen of what other assets do they have. Do they have gold? Do they have silver? Do they have other things that they can sell to pay off and give their taxes as well? So a lot of time you will find people coming in and asking for things, and they're driving in like super rich cars and saying, brother, I don't have money to pay for certain thing, right? So is it possible that they can sell certain of their things and then buy and pay off their tax money or not? That their house is going upon a lien itself. So it cannot be a blanket answer that you can give someone zakat because they own. Yes, the Quran itself mentions al-ghaimin, meaning people who are in debt. truly indebted in such a way that they are unable to breathe and live properly, the Quran recommends paying those people. To take someone's mushkil and difficult away of debt is really recommended. But for that scenario that mentions that they have to pay for that, might be a little bit of a shaky situation. We'll have more assessment needed for that. I think we're already 9:30 mark, inshallah. We'll continue if needed afterwards, inshallah. Khair Mufti Sahib? Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا